Hey guys, this is John Rivera from the Solid State Gamer, here once again to bring you guys another installment in the Quick Look video series. This time around, we are going to be looking at Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story Part 1 of the Blue Destiny saga. As you can see, I'm using an Action Replay 4M Plus version 2.02 for good reason. This was a Japan-only release. This game was made by the company Satsu Agency in association with Bandai, as well as Sunrise, which are basically the license holders for the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. So here we have an intro cinematic. So this game, along with the other two parts of the Blue Destiny trilogy, are actually regarded as being canon. So this Gaiden, or side story, takes place at the latter end of the so-called 1-year war in the original Mobile Suit Gundam franchise, as indicated by the text underneath the cinematic, which is oddly relegated to a fraction of the screen. I don't know why they did that, but it does look good. It's kind of like a retrospective, the way it's shot, it's like a retrospective or a documentary. Very interesting choice. As you can tell, the dialogue is all in Japanese, and this does not change during the gameplay. In terms of the import friendliness, this game ranks on the higher side, I would say. You can definitely get into it. It pretty much just drops you right into the action. And even though the briefings are carried out with Japanese dialogue, you can still see with the on-screen display that they are pretty much just putting objects in front of your face, and you can just discern from that what is an enemy, what is an ally, what's the core objective, what's the main target. So it's pretty much an import-friendly game. Unfortunately, I'm just talking about the gameplay. Unfortunately, in order to understand the story, the only story you can discern from the game is through the gameplay itself. And that's because all the dialogue is in Japanese. So if you want to kind of educate yourself on the story, I would suggest going on an FAQ or some sort of fan site for Gundam and researching on the story behind the Blue Destiny saga, because it is a very storied one. I find it very interesting compared to the original run of the OVA episodes for the original Mobile Suit Gundam. So let's just dig into the options so that way I can get this out of the way. Game level, that's difficulty. Sound mode, obviously stereo, mono. This is a BGM sound test. And here is the config. Now you have your choice from A to F, so you have 6 different button configurations at your disposal. I will be sticking with Type A because I'm used to it. Now, I will say this. A lot of people are curious as to whether or not this game is twin stick compatible, and I'm going to say no. This game actually came out in 1996, but it came out, I want to say, two to few months before the release of Virtual-On Cyber Troopers. So it came out months before the twin stick was even a thing. It was before it was even commercially released. So I doubt that Bandai and Sunrise and Satsu Agency had any idea of the existence of the twin stick. So, unfortunately, this game is not compatible with that peripheral. Alright, let's just get into it. Now, what's special about this game, as well as Part 2 and 3, is that it takes place in the Mobile Suit Gundam universe, but unlike most of the other licensed games that have been one-on-one fighting games or third-person hack-and-slash games like with the Dynasty Warriors meets Gundam sort of spin-off titles, this game is a first-person mecha combat simulation, much like what people have seen with the MechWarrior franchise of games. So it's first-person in the cockpit, very tactile, tactical combat, and unlike the MechWarrior games, it's not a clunky sort of gameplay style that lacks grace or finesse. It's a game where you're pretty much engaging in a dance with the enemy, and that's how you pretty much get the upper hand on the enemies and land successful hits. And as you can see, this game it's one that's pretty impressive for the time. Like I said, this came out in early to mid 1996 for the Sega Saturn in Japan only, and it looks pretty awesome actually. Running at 30 frames a second. As you can see, we've got some camera bob, some weapon bob right there. I like this weapon bob as opposed to like the Doom semicircle crescent sort of movement style of the gun animation. Okay, so here we have the main map right here. I'm actually pausing the game. Now the red dots are obviously the enemies. The orange dots are my compatriots. And there don't seem to be any defend points. And as you can see at the right hand side of the screen, I've got a rifle, a blaster rifle. I have a Vulcan. Actually, it's 2 Vulcan cannons. If you are familiar with the Mobile Suit Gundam series, the regular mobile suits of both armies have the akimbo Vulcan cannons on the headpiece of the mobile suit, and they fire automatic in succession. I also have hand grenades at my disposal, and those are useful for taking out stuff like sentry towers and tanks on the ground that are kind of tedious to destroy from just using the blaster or the Vulcan cannons. I also have access to a beam sword, and I'll show you all like how to do that. But yeah, as you can see, the map is actually pretty useful. It shows you everything you need to know. The green arrow is obviously my character, and that's where he's facing in the environment. And as you can see, the maps are pretty big. So let's just get into this. So I'm actually able to rotate my camera left or right by pressing the shoulder buttons respectively. I can jump. If I hold down the jump button, I'll use my jump jets to sustain my jump. It also contributes to the temperature meter at the bottom. And just above that, you can see that yellow bar is my shield. And once it runs out and it's all red, I am dead. I also have hand grenades. As you can see, the 9 turned into an 8. And those green arrows, which shows H, N, and L, indicate my vertical aiming elevation, or my vertical pitch of the camera. The vertical aiming in this game is very antiquated, to say the least. It operates more on the level of MechWarrior 1 for DOS. The only thing is, MechWarrior 1 came out in 1989, and this game came out in 1996. So yeah, antiquated to say the least, but it's not a deal breaker, honestly. So I'm strafing left and right with the D-pad. I'm also moving forward and backpedaling. I can also engage in quick dashes using my jump jets. I'm going to dash left, dash right, dash forward. Now dashing forward while pressing down up on the D-pad will actually make me swipe at an enemy with a beam sword. So let's get into the arena. I'm going to lock onto the enemy by pressing C. Use my blaster by tapping B, but if I hold down B, I'll be using my Vulcan cannons on the headpiece of the mobile suit. Here's the mobile suit down. Now I'm obviously fighting the Zeon troops. As you can see, the scale of this game is actually pretty impressive. You see the textures are animated on the ground, blinking. You also have buildings and all sorts of structures littering the environment. It's actually pretty impressive. I know the draw distance doesn't seem like much, but when you jump up, you can obviously see that the environment goes for a long stretch. So it's not really all that janky. Now the jumping in this game is very interesting because when you press down jump, the camera rotates downward, almost like in Jumping Flash. If you guys are familiar with that game, when you do a double jump in Jumping Flash, the camera will just rotate downward permanently until you've planted on the ground. And that's in order to show the player where they're landing in the environment. Let's see if I can run over that. No, I can't. I'm trying to run over that vehicle. Beam sword. I wish the beam sword was a dedicated button, but I mean it works. But it's very context sensitive, and unless you're dashing into an enemy in a forward direction, you can't use it, which is kind of a bummer. I just want to use it on these buildings and stuff, but it won't allow me to do that. Like, I'm dashing up against it, it won't allow me to do that. So some of the attacks are context sensitive. Actually, all of them are, because in order to fire off your blaster, you have to tap the B button. In order to engage your Vulcan cannons, you kind of have to tap and hold down. Let's see if I can get really close so I can show you the fact that the lock-on does not do one-to-one tracking with the enemy. As you can see, my camera is like still fighting to center on the target, but that can be circumvented by pressing that respective direction on the shoulder buttons. As I mentioned before, you kind of, in order to keep a track or a beat on your target, you have to kind of engage in a dance with these guys. And let's see if I can overheat. I'm going to overheat. There you go. So I cannot engage in a dash right now. I'm double tapping left, but it wouldn't let me dash until the gauge goes down. And I let my engine or my reactors cool off. Here we have some tanks. Now, a weird control quirk is that you can't really press the B button and the Y button to pop out grenades at the same time. You kind of have to wait until one action on the B button is done before you can actually throw the grenade. It's a weird control quirk. It's not really that big of a deal, but it does stick out like a sore thumb. Yes, all these environments, all the structures in the environment are destructible. I can actually Godzilla-style walk over these buildings and destroy them, as you just saw. The explosions in this game and all the effects are pretty satisfying. Oh, so we see this guy is actually doing some dashing to dodge out of the way. No worries. Just slash him. Now, as you can see, even when I use my blaster, well, I'm not really hitting him, but it doesn't knock him down on the ground. Only when I use my beam sword does it knock him down on the ground. And that's incredibly useful. It's kind of like it's an equalizer, I guess you might say. It's kind of like in a beat-em-up game when you use your supercharged attack to knock everybody on the ground. It's useful because it kind of, if you're getting bum rushed by a bunch of enemies, you just want to incapacitate somebody and render them immobile for just a second, so that way you can even things out and make things a little more fair and tilt things in your favor. Come on, there we go. Just trying to take care of these tanks because they can be a nuisance. So much destruction. Now, even though the destructive environments with the buildings and stuff, being able to be walked over and blown up, it is cool, but it does, it goes both ways. There are future missions in this game where you have to defend some energy silos or some fuel silos, and the silos are just as easily destructible as other structures in the environment. So basically, those missions are extremely difficult because sometimes you'll be trying to get a beat on an enemy and they'll just be dashing and flying every which way, and you pop off around without hitting the target and it goes right past him and hits one of those energy silos. It's a bummer. It makes for an extremely difficult mission, and I think it was made difficult in ways that the developers didn't originally perceive or imagine. So there's a huge difficulty spike in this game that happens around the 4th and 5th missions, where you have to defend these silos from like these crunked up Zeon troops, as well as the Blue Destiny GM. And here we have the end of the mission. Finally destroyed all these enemies. Dialogue. Ah, Japan, I love you so much. And we have a full moon that's winking at us. Great. Mission complete. Honestly, I'm not really putting a lot of effort into this gameplay. Forgive me, but it's hard to talk and play at the same time. I know I've said that on plenty of other occasions, but it is true. Yeah, got a D on that. Not particularly proud of it, but it's alright for a playthrough while talking, so. Alright, so next mission. Fair warning, this mission is kind of scripted, but this game is, at the same time, a very story-driven one. It's not just an action-adventure sort of romp. You are fighting in a war, and, you know, each character has their motivation and whatnot. So, unfortunately, it's not something you're going to understand speaking only English, or even being bilingual like me. So that's the Blue Destiny. And whoever's piloting it is going to take out my two friends, and I'll have to save them. Now this guy is ridiculous. He's so overpowered. He doesn't overheat that easily. He's going to shoot these homing missiles. This is where you see the draw distance limitation. And the controls are rearing its ugly head because I have to hold down this button or double tap it to fire off a grenade. Come on. There we go. Like I said, it's kind of a dance. Unfortunately, I can't dance the way he can because he does not overheat apparently. Or his temperature overheating threshold is a lot higher than mine. So I'll overheat before he does. There we go. Oh, goodness. Not a good situation to be in. And... Gosh, this guy is super fast. Sorry if I'm not talking much, but this guy is a beast. Oh, not a moment too soon, because I just started overheating. He's going to get his licks on me. There we go. Goodness gracious, this guy is so nimble. Almost had him. This game has a lot of great action in it, as you can see, and the graphics are just spectacular for the time. Like I said, this is 96. Around this time, games like Tomb Raider were coming out. You don't... that dialogue. You don't see a lot of texture jiggle in this game, which is actually pretty impressive, and it's very rare that you see Z-ordering mistakes unless polygons are clearly clipping through others. So it's a pretty tight 3D engine for the time. Again, I got a D grade, yeah, blah blah blah. So I'm sure I'm pretty sure I know what you guys are thinking. Why did this game not see a North American or European release if you guys are from Europe? Well, the fact of the matter is, this was 1996, as I've mentioned plenty of times before, but that year is significant in terms of, I guess, our understanding of various other cultures and their media. In the United States specifically, I can't vouch for Canada or Mexico or any of the other Central American countries or South America, but I can tell you one thing. In Puerto Rico, personally, I became highly acquainted with anime and Japanese media in general, just because we had access to it. So my first experiences watching anime was a satellite television channel called Locomotion, and that was a specialized channel that aired Japanese broadcast television, specifically the animated stuff. So I became acquainted with anime early on, as early as, I would say, the mid-1990s. And I was young around that time. I don't think I was even 10 years old at that point. But the fact of the matter is that in the continuous United States, anime was very much a niche and unpopular sort of subgenre of cartoon animation and media until like the early aughts, when Toonami came out. Toonami really changed everything. And yes, when I say Toonami, I'm talking about the cartoon animation block that played on Adult Swim. That was hosted by Moltar at first, and then got hosted by Tom and his ship, the Absolution. And it might be crazy to think, but at the time, Toonami was the thing that introduced Japanese animation to a wide audience in America. I dare say that without Toonami, it would have taken longer for anime to, I guess, get a foothold in the North American market and the North American consciousness. And because of that, before that, like the mid to late 90s, Japanese animation was very niche. You were weird if you liked Japanese anime. I know, because I was a fan of Japanese animation, and I got ridiculed for that at school. Because I was a nerd, apparently. So, Mobile Suit Gundam, I knew of its existence, and I'd watched some episodes of the original Mobile Suit Gundam and 0083, which 0083 is, in my opinion, the best one. It's definitely my favorite by far. Not to say the other ones aren't as good, I just have an affinity for that particular series of episodes. And I think it's just because of the atmosphere and the motif, and that intro is killer. But what I'm trying to say, and what I'm trying to get at, is that Mobile Suit Gundam was just unheard of in North America. Again, it was a niche thing. It was, not everybody liked anime, and not everybody loved giant robots. Most of us who loved giant robots, or mecha, were playing and really getting deeply engrossed in the Western iteration of mecha combat in terms of games called MechWarrior. And that's where we got our fix. Little did we know that this game and the other two parts of the Mobile Suit Gundam side story Blue Destiny saga were being made for the Sega Saturn. And you have to remember, this was before the internet. Now, had we known that these games were in development, I'm sure there would have been a fan outcry for this game's release, along with parts 2 and 3 for North America. But it wasn't in the cards for the North American Sega Saturn. Especially because of the fact that Bernie Stolar had a stranglehold on which games saw a North American release and which ones didn't. If it was a game that was sprite-based, or if it was a game based on a Japanese anime, chances are it wasn't going to see a North American release, because Bernie Stolar didn't think that the US audience would want a game like that. A game based on a Japanese anime, or taking place within the universe of an animation franchise, or something that featured very heavy sprite-based animation for its graphical aesthetic. It was pretty rare that you saw games like that in North America, and admittedly, they got little marketing thrown at them. And also, they were very much limited in release to boot. I think I'm close to death. That's unfortunate. There we go. Goodness, I'm getting my butt kicked. Come on. Oh, goodness gracious. I'm down for the count. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact that it was based on a Japanese anime, and because of the fact it was also a mech simulation game, which lacked broad appeal amongst console gamers. And because it was very Japanese in nature, there's just no way, under Bernie Stoller's leadership, that this game was going to see a North American release. Or a European one, for that matter. So, it's unfortunate, but that's how it goes sometimes. And it's great to see that nowadays, people aren't as close-minded as they were a decade plus ago. Because now we are starting to see a lot of games that are unabashedly Japanese in nature, culturally and stylistically, and they're coming out nowadays, and they're being met with wide open arms, and that makes me really happy. Even if they're games that I'm personally not interested in, I'm happy for the people who want games like that, and are really interested in immersing themselves in Japanese culture to that extent. It's one of the beauties of video games in general, the world of gaming, is that it's become so globalized to the point where developers from all over the globe are releasing games for worldwide releases. And that makes me really happy, because even when you play a game, you know, it's like watching a foreign movie. You know, if you're just watching it just for the sake of watching it, and you don't care to understand the culture of that crafted that movie, or the culture that movie is grounded in, if you don't want to understand that, then you're going to be missing out on the overall experience. If you actually do give a crap about the culture in which that movie was created, or that piece of media was created, it's a richer experience. And this game is no exception. I mean, even though it's a simulation mecha game, as you can see, it moves a lot faster and more frenetic paced than, say, MechWarrior. It's not the same experience. I mean, you put this side by side with MechWarriors 2 and 3 and 4, you're gonna get a completely different experience. You know, MechWarrior is a lot slower, clumsier, and lacks grace and finesse. As for this game, you're pretty much dancing around your enemy. It's like it is pretty much like a ballet. And only by getting down these methodologies or ideologies behind the combat will you actually succeed in this game. So it's very much a different approach to mechanized combat than you see with the BattleTech or MechWarrior universe. Nice. Doing a lot better than I did last time. Come on. There we go. Stunned him just... Oh, did not knock him over. Come on. For some reason, I'm unable to knock this guy over. Here we go. Oh, we're starting to see some frame rate dip right here. Okay, so I was incorrect. This game does not operate at a steady 30 frames per second. It's only when you're on, I guess, geographic formations like these hills right here, which pretty impressive for the time. But unfortunately, it's a performance hit. Because as you can see, everything else right here, they're just sprites. Kind of like Doom style, where they're sprites in 3D space, or simulated 3D space. They're always facing your character. So, that's kind of janky, but again, it was 1996. The best game graphically at that point was, from what I understand and from what I remember, was Quake. So, hard to live up to that game. That game was an industry leader, so. But this game is still incredibly impressive, and it's a joy to play. It is very satisfying. Shooting guns and using your beam sword and shooting off your blaster rounds, very, very satisfying. And it's so much better than those crappy Mobile Suit Gundam fighting games. I mean, who keeps on buying those things? I remember my first experience with Mobile Suit Gundam in gaming was, unfortunately, what was it? I think it was Mobile Suit Gundam Wing Ultimate Battle Assault 2 or something like that. I believe that's the name of the game. I could be butchering the whole title. I think it was Gundam Wing Battle Assault 2. And that game is... I hope that I'm not offending any fans of the game by saying this, but that game is junk. I hate that game. Screw that game. That was my first Mobile Suit Gundam gaming experience. And it was terrible. It was just this sprite-based one-on-one fighting game when really what I wanted was a game like this, where you're inside the cockpit. You're actually experiencing the battlefield, the war, just like any of the other pilots would have experienced it. To me, that's what Mobile Suit Gundam is all about. And I didn't really get that. The closest that I really got to Mobile Suit Gundam as a sort of simulation fighting game was Virtualon. So I didn't really get any good experiences until, I want to say, 1999, when there was another Mobile Suit Gundam side story game. It was, I can't remember the exact title, but it was something about the War of 0079. And it was its own standalone game. It had nothing to do with the Blue Destiny saga from what I remember. It was a lot harder than this game from what I remember. But it was still that first-person mecha combat simulation game. And it was glorious. I remember the first time I played that game, I'm like, finally, a Mobile Suit Gundam game where you're actually in the cockpit waging war against a bunch of enemy Zeon troops. I mean, I was like thinking to myself, this is great. It's about damn time they came out with this, because I'd been waiting for an experience like that since I first watched Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 back in like 1994. Little did I know that they actually had cut their teeth on making the Blue Destiny trilogy for the Saturn. So even though, yeah, it's funny because I was saying it's about damn time for the Dreamcast game, but the Dreamcast game was a product of everything they learned with the first 3 games. And it was a graphical overhaul of what they had done with the first 3. Oh, nice, I got a B. So yeah, this game I think is pretty entertaining. I think it's fantastic, actually. Okay, this is where the game gets really hard. Remember what I said, guys, about the environmental destruction with the buildings being easily destructible? Well, this is where that feature rears its ugly head in the worst way. So I have to protect these fuel silos that are indicated by the green dots. And there are 10 of them. 4 of them and 6 of them being in different groups. As you can see, the environments in this game look pretty impressive, actually. Again, this is 1996. This is not even the 3rd year of the Saturn. So. Because you guys have to remember, the Saturn came out in 1995. So. Actually had a several months head lead on the Sony PlayStation. Okay, let's get on with this, because this is extremely tough. Hopefully I can get through it. And if I can't, then I guess that'll pretty much conclude this quick look, because I'm running on half an hour right now. Alright, let's get into it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Now, as you can see, these guys are on super steroids, and they're moving extremely fast. So I gotta knock these guys down with my beam sword as soon as possible. I'm running circles around this guy. Where are you? See, the bummer is that these guys are starting to throw grenades, and those grenades can easily decimate those fuel silos. So my objective really is to keep these guys from getting as close to the silos as possible. There we go. Make sure I don't overheat. Oh, goodness gracious. I gotta stop destroying buildings. That actually does take off of your overall grade. Come on, come on, come on. There we go. Take a few pot shots at him with my blaster. There we go. The blaster strategy is actually a pretty good one, because as soon as they dodge it, oh goodness, one of the bummers of this is that I'm running into these buildings before I get into these enemies. Come on, come on. There we go. Oh, goodness gracious. No. Get away. I'm trying my best to slash at them, but it's a little harder to pull off than you might think. You kind of have to be really square with the enemy to pull it off. And I'm destroying everything. There we go. Yes! Oh, see, he's already destroyed several silos. Oh, jeez, and I just destroyed one by myself. Oh, no. There we go. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't think I'm going to complete this mission successfully. Cool. Stopped him. Stop! Ugh. Nope. Don't do it. No! There we go. That was close. Sorry if I'm not talking much, but these guys are oh, goodness gracious. These guys are insane. Oh. I can't move now. Kind of abused my systems. Oh, almost got. There we go. Come on. Nice. That's what you got to do. You got to knock them down, really, to incapacitate them and keep them from destroying everything else. Oh, goodness. See, at this point, I'm not even worried about my own shield. I'm actually worried about these silos. This is getting ridiculous. Oh, man. There we go. Nice. All right. Nope. Sorry if I'm not talking much. This is quite intense. Oh my goodness. Wow. That was intense. Alright guys, well that was a quick look at Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story, Part 1 of the Blue Destiny Saga for the Sega Saturn, an exclusive for the Japan audience. It's so sad that this game never came out in North America or Europe, but I do understand why it went down that way. But there is good news. I mean, this game is quite import friendly. I mean, even if you're not a student of Japanese and can't read it or can't speak it, as you can see, a lot of the elements in this game are in English. The big elements that really count. You're not going to understand the dialogue. Like I said, if you want to get your lowdown on the story of the Blue Destiny story, you can go onto a fan website and they will detail a synopsis of the story for you to understand. So you won't be really missing much. The unfortunate thing about these games is that they feature incredible packaging. I know I usually don't talk about this, but the packaging of the games are pretty impressive, and I think I've covered that on a weekly mailbag video. And the instruction booklet, the CD caddy, and the cover are one piece pretty much. So you just open it up like a book, and it has the detailed instructions in there as well as the story. It's actually a really impressive arrangement. So this is a game that I highly recommend for people who are a fan of Japanese import games. This is definitely a solid buy. not only that, but it's actually cheaper than you might think. I know last time I covered Stellar Assault SS, and also I covered Galaxy Force 2, which, again, 2 other Japan import games. Obviously not as import-friendly financially speaking as this one. Those other ones were pretty much, like Stellar Assault SS is at least a $150 game because of how rare and limited run that game is, or was in its heyday. And the same thing with Galaxy Force 2. It's a $50 game. Not terrible, but it might not be worth it to those who are just into longer gaming experiences, because it is a short-form arcade game, and I'm definitely not going to beat this mission. But you guys can find this on Amazon's Marketplace, or eBay, or half.com. I actually highly recommend looking on eBay for this game, because you can definitely find a copy of Part 1 easily for less than $10. And you could probably get it for free shipping and handling as well. But shipping and handling shouldn't be a big deal. It shouldn't be no more than a few dollars. So I don't think you'll spend much more than $10. Maybe 10 plus, like 10, 12, maybe 13 at the most. But there's no reason why you should spend around 20 bucks for a copy of Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story Part 1. It's Parts 2 and 3 that are a little more rare. And when I say rare, that's a relative term. It's not really all that rare. You can expect to pay maybe $15 to $20 for Parts 2 and 3, respectively. Oh, I'm leaving the combat zone. Yep, I'm on the border of being outside of the combat zone. But, yeah, if you look online, just look up Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story Saturn, and you guys should be able to find some listings that are less than 10 bucks a pop. Around, like, maybe 7 or 8. Excluding free shipping. Some of them might be including free shipping. And I cannot knock these guys down. But anyway, yeah, that's Mobile Suit Gundam Side Story Part 1. Obviously, to play this game, you'll need something like an action replay cartridge or some means to play import titles, which, not really that expensive, easy to find. So, yeah, there it is. Blue Destiny Part 1 for the Saturn. This game is a load of fun. I highly recommend it. If you guys are fans of like MechWarrior or Armored Core, definitely look into this game. It's definitely a treat. Nice. Another one bites the dust. Anyway, as always, this is John Rivera from the Solid State Gamer signing off for the Quick Look video series, saying thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, or just overall criticisms, be sure to comment below this video. And be sure to check out our main website, thesolidstategamer.wordpress.com, for more updates in terms of videos, recorded audio productions, and more, including written reviews and articles in the world of video games. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.